All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 17th meeting of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. The meeting is being recorded. I've also pasted the agenda into the chat for those who need to see it. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout. Please remain muted if you're virtual and use the raise your hand function if you want to chime in at any point or just drop a note in the chat. Also to note, closed captioning is available on the desktop version of Microsoft Teams. To enable closed captioning, click the three dots at the top of the window and click Turn on Live Captions. Montavious, I'll paste it again. Unfortunately, closed captioning is not available for the web browser version of Teams. Let me paste that one. It might be further up in the chat. I pasted it earlier, but I will just do it one more time. You see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Let's get started with roll call. If you're here, just note your presence. Aaron Arteaga. Anna Baliakova.
Present.
Alina DeGrado.
Present.
Larissa Gladden.
Present.
Mitchell Henke.
Present.
Montavious Jones.
Here.
Kathleen Minnick is not here today. Ben Teal.
Present.
Barry Weber is also not here today. Kevin Cushel.
Here.
Stephen Owen.
Here.
And we still do not have a public safety rep officially on board. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Montavious, for approval of the February minutes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Is Aaron here? Or I missed that.
He is not.
No. Okay. Okay. Yep. Can we go ahead and get a motion to approve the minutes? I assume everybody had a chance to look at those already.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Awesome. Hearing no objections, meeting minutes are approved from last week. I'm not seeing, I can't see who else is online, but I believe we have somebody here from DPW to discuss the Plaza program.
Yep, Kate Reardon is here in person. Kate, come up to the table maybe so people online can see you.
Hi, Kate.
Hello. Hello. Morning, everybody.
Morning. Thank you for taking time to come to our early Friday meeting. We appreciate you doing that for us. A lot of us on the call and in the meeting are very excited about this project that we've heard about really through the news. And, you know, I'm guessing the news hasn't given as much detail as you can give us. So we're excited to have you here today to provide more detail. And also I'm really interested in how we can have, how we can be of service from this point on, and also understanding how we could have been of service to even get to this point where we have a program that's being rolled out.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Kate Reardon. I'm a senior transportation planner with the multimodal unit in DPW. So we are pretty excited to launch our interim plaza program. So this is a new permit program that has now passed through the Public Works Committee. So the next step is that it will be approved or heard before council on the 21st, so next Tuesday. So if it is approved, then it gets signed by the mayor, and then it will be in effect. I don't have any indication that this will not be approved. It was fully supported at Public Works Committee, so it's pretty exciting. So the interim plaza program is going to allow business improvement districts, neighborhood improvement districts, community groups, even individuals if they really wanted to create what we're calling interim plazas using excess street space. So it's important to note that this is street space. This is not a vacant lot program. This is not a private property plaza program. This is using street space. So it is using temporary materials like barricades, planters, jersey barriers to shut down parts of the street, maybe even an entire block, to create more spaces for people to gather. We already have a couple of similar examples that have gone through our Active Streets for Business program, so you might be familiar with the Nomad Active Streets for Business kind of plaza, and then Zocalo Food Truck Park did something similar. But the key difference here is that these are open to the public. They are not private spaces for private businesses. So they're intended to be gathering places for people. And they also can help. We know we have some community groups that are interested in using this as a way to try out different street safety design. So we've got a great example of some partners on the south side. I see Mary Beth McGinnis is on here. She's been involved in that. So at 16th and Forest Home, we had a number of community groups come together and shut down a right turn slip lane and create a plaza out of that. And that's actually in place right now. So you can go see that if you haven't seen it already. But we are pretty excited for this program to kick off. We think there's going to be some interest. The first step in the approval process is emailing me to make sure that the location that you chosen is appropriate, because you know that not every street space is going to be something that we can shut down. There are some examples in the guidelines of what different areas might look like that you could use. And then after that, it goes through our typical permit process. You fill out a permit and there's information in the guidelines on how you go about that. The other exciting thing going along with this is that we will be announcing, once this is approved, a grant program. So we will be funding up to 3 plazas, up to $30,000 each, to make sure that this is something that's available to all areas of the city, all types of groups, various resources. So that will be launching along with, or we'll be announcing that along with the approval of this. So some exciting things coming up.
So this, like any street space, it could be a parking lane, it could be a slip lane, it could be an entire block.
Yeah, and these guidelines are like, we don't have our website is not up yet because we're waiting for it to be approved. You can get to the guidelines in 2 ways. Urban Milwaukee has an article that links to them. And then also if you go into Legistar, to the Public Works Committee where this resolution was heard. So sorry, it's not a super easy way, but there are different pictures for those of you in the room. Sorry.
I can try and pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mike
so I
can
share my screen.
see if you can get it.
It was maybe a similar one off of Russell in Bayview where they shut it down.
Yeah.
Near Humboldt.
Yep.
Okay. Neat.
So how long are they open for?
Yep. So the permit is a annual permit. So it's really up to the applicant if they want to keep it up all year round. We are going to allow them to be up during winter, but you do have to have a snow clearance plan in place with us.
Gosh.
And applicants are responsible for all the maintenance of the plaza and snow clearance and garbage pickup and all that stuff.
So it's a bit of a lease to the public?
Maybe there's no money involved.
The
Also,
public
there's
owns
no-
it.
Yeah.
Right, the public owns
Right.
it, but the public also ends up managing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is no fee for it, at least initially, because this is public space. It's one of the mayor's initiatives. We want to make sure we're encouraging it.
And I mean, for other, like there are permits that do cost money. That's usually for like parking meters, or the city has to set up barricades, and neither of those
There may be parking meters involved here, but
And that you'd
We
have
are
to
not.
pay for them.
yeah, we are not requiring applicants to pay for them,
Oh, you're not, okay.
at least
That's
right
good.
now. Can't promise that's.
Right.
But I think for this, that's gonna stay the same. Active Streets for Business is a different story since
Right.
that is.
And I'm thinking special events as well, I believe, or.
Yeah, yep.
Well, this is super cool. Yeah, I love this. I think it's super valuable. I was able to be involved with some of the Active Streets for Business with the East Side bid back when that was happening and going through the application process with the businesses themselves and kind of hearing their feedback on the different costs and ways to understand how it worked. It sounds like this looks like a very accessible guideline document.
The document, I
Yeah.
will say the permit side of things, that's totally new to me. And so I am very open to feedback if like any of you, or if you hear of anybody that's like this, like, changing this one thing would make this so much better. I want that feedback if anybody hears it, because again, the permitting thing is new to me.
Sure.
I was wondering how are you promoting this to the public?
Yeah, so once it gets approved, we'll have a press release. We also have just an email list of community groups, bids, NIDs that we'll get that information out to. But also we also presented at the bid NID council meeting earlier this week. But yes, very welcome to any assistance you all want to give in getting info out.
We have a couple, where are we here? Questions online. I think I saw, well, let's start with committee members. So Alina, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the $30,000 grants were committed for 2023 and if that would continue or if this is just a 1-year thing at this time.
Right now, we just have it planned for 2023. We have not planned out our 2024 budget so far, but we'll kind of see how things go this year and if we want to continue it with a new grant program in 2024.
And they're not committed yet.
They are not committed yet, yeah. So the application will open when this is approved next Tuesday.
All right, Mary Beth.
Yeah, I mean, question I probably could have emailed you, Kate, but since you're here, for the insurance requirement, do you have, or will there be like recommendations or estimates? I'm just wondering, as a person who is handling one of these, I don't even know where to get started and what kind of insurance may be required.
Yeah, so there is in the terms and conditions part of it, a little bit about insurance. I will admit to insurance not being one of my page 6 areas of expertise. So if that ends up being a barrier, I would love to know about it. We used the same language from Active Streets for Business. Is essentially what's in these terms and conditions. There's some modifications, but that's a carryover from that. And again, not knowing much about insurance, I don't know if this is totally like for a community group, not something that is what people generally have. So please let me know if that's a barrier.
Yeah, I'll let you know as we try to figure that out.
Okay.
I have another question. I'm curious how you were able to use any feedback from the Active Streets for Business and any kind of past pedestrian plaza type projects to inform us.
Yeah, so our permitting folks are really, they are in the trenches working on this all the time, so they were able to help out a lot in modifying even like the guidelines that came from Active Streets for Business and made it into here because they've worked with applicants all across the board. So they know, they've got a good idea of like what confuses people and what additional guidance we need to have in here.
Gotcha.
And then, sorry, what was that?
I think that was mainly it.
Okay.
It was, I know Montavious mentioned something, and we've got a couple work groups going now, and in terms of our policies work group and everything, I'm sure we'd benefit to know how maybe we as a body would have been able to help support this sooner if we kind of were up and running before.
Yeah, I think the best type of support comes when something is coming before committee, because that's when there's an opportunity to speak to it, provide a letter of support, and that's really when the discussion around it comes. So council members can see like there is support for it. And, you know, this was something that we kind of knew early on from our initial conversations with alders that this wasn't going to face a lot of opposition. So, so if you want to be strategic in where you lend your support and where you don't, it might be helpful to just talk with us, and or we can maybe even come to you and let you know when there's something that might need some more support. Because it's always great to have that support, but there are certainly some projects or initiatives that where we know we need the public support more than others.
Great, thanks.
I'd say too, I mean, this has been in development now for probably over a year, close to a year. And I think knowing this body now exists, like, you know, throughout development, there's a lot of questions that come up, a lot of ideas that are being bounced around. So, you know, there, if not this, there may be similar initiatives where, you know, we want to just kind of come in and kind of provide updates and get feedback on a variety of things as things are in development. You know, I don't know if that would have been applicable here or not, but I could absolutely see that happening.
Cool.
Is there a next step to it? Like, will some potentially be permanently converted? Is that?
That's all, that could be a possibility down the road. So I will say one of the reasons why this is an interim plaza program, to create a permanent plaza in the city, there is a very specific state statute that we have to follow that is just for Milwaukee.
Every time.
Yeah, so.
No, there's for cities of the first class.
And Milwaukee is the only one.
Right.
So, so there are some more stringent requirements if we were to go that route, but I could see that if, you know, some of these were very successful, that the community might want to make them permanent.
But there's nothing to stop us from indefinitely renewing the temporary permit.
Right now, no.
We have a question online, Anna Narvi.
Hi, good morning. Thanks everyone for the chance for guests at the meeting to ask a question. And I apologize if this is in the document because I haven't seen it previously. I have two questions. I'm interested in knowing about the distribution of these and if it's by demand or if there would be an effort made to try to sprinkle these more planfully around, perhaps based on complete streets reports or just maybe pushing demand in some areas that might not self-identify as a place that's really plugged into where one of these might want to be. And my second question is sort of related is, you know, I really appreciated that map. I think it's on the next slide in your document. If there's a way to look at where the proximity to things like bubbler plazas or bike infrastructure or something like that, it might help, I don't know, induce demand or just sort of make it make sense as to where they're placed and like how to decide what goes where. So thanks for the opportunity to ask.
Yeah, thank you. So I think in general with just the permit, we are looking for the demand to come from the applicants. However, with our grant program, we do have the ability to prioritize, and we do have in our evaluation criteria, we do list out a couple of different areas that get more points. So we use our neighborhood revitalization strategy areas as one geography where that really helps us emphasize areas that are low income, non-white populations. And then we also do award additional points for locations near to our high injury network. So streets where there are is a history of crashes. There may be some other, I didn't print out that document and that's not available online yet. So there might be some other evaluation criteria there as well.
Now, are we doing, is there a requirement that is that a pre-approval?
Yes,
So
yeah.
if somebody has an idea, what kind of that is?
Yep, yeah. So yeah, for the grant, similar to the regular program, if you've got, we need to pre-approve your location. So you're not filling out an entire application and then you realize it's not a location you can do.
And that grant, in terms of stipulations, what it can go towards, is that specific or?
It's fairly broad, obviously it has to be related to the plaza, but it can pay for materials, like the barricades. It could pay for programming, seating, paint, if you want to do some kind of decorative paint in the plaza. Broad.
Awesome.
This is similar to the crosswalk kind of thing program.
Yeah, well, if you do want to do paint in it, you have to apply for that permit to get your artwork approved.
So anything permanent, in a sense, needs to be applied for in addition to?
The two things, well, the handful of things you would need to apply for in addition to this would be paint the pavement, which is really, it would just be to approve your artwork and make sure that you're following the guidelines in there. Special event permit for different types of special events, and there's some info in here on like what would require a special event permit. And then active streets or extension of business premises, if there was a business next door and they wanted to use part of the space or as like an extension of their business, or if they wanted to have alcohol in the plaza or food, or I mean, you can eat food in it, but you can't be like serving food unless you've got the extension of business premises.
Another question online, Charlene Forston.
Hi, good morning. I'm an intern student with the health department. Thank you for allowing us to come on the guest. But I had a question. I was listening, and I think the answer kind of got answered as far as like safety. Safety, and then it was my concern was like, is there times that the applicants have to have for it to be able to use the plaza area as far as you know, up to like 11 p.m. at night, or because I know if there's other businesses around, do you all speak with the businesses too to kind of get approval from them in order to accept whoever wants to use the space?
So we did consider having a time limit on it because there are some other cities that do that, but we took that out. We want to kind of leave it up to the applicant to kind of self-monitor. And then also part of the application process or like decision-making process and approval is making sure that there is general support for the plaza. So if there are other, you know, residences or businesses, other properties around it that you're going to be impacting, we want to know that there's, you know, there's not like strong opposition from those people.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just very quick, if there is opposition, what kind of process does that go through?
We don't have a set process. You know, I think we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. We don't want, you know, there could be one business owner or one property that's really against it, and we want to be able to evaluate that based on the situation.
Gotcha.
Hopefully everyone will just be so excited about it.
So excited.
Won't have any.
Yeah. Great.
And some fun trivia for anyone who wants to play along. These are all actual intersections and streets in the city of Milwaukee.
You thought of it.
So I think maybe one has been modified slightly.
Well,
That's fair.
two of them are
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
But
All right. So we don't need to like shout out answers now, but if anyone wants to submit answers, please go ahead and do so.
That's a great idea for like urban planning in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Like name that intersection. I love it.
Very cool.
We have a couple more minutes if needed. Otherwise, I see Dan Casanova is here for the next item, but we can spend a few more minutes here if needed. Any other questions or discussions on the Plaza program?
I've got some questions and comments.
Awesome, go ahead.
Thank you, Kate, for the presentation. Sounds like the awesome project. I'm happy to see this go forward. Hoping the committee approves it without any fanfare. So my question is similar related to Larissa's question. How can we, if DPW is willing to be involved in these kind of things, earlier? Because right now, between this and some other emails I've gotten from DPW requesting our support on various items, write a letter of support for this or that. We feel like we're becoming a committee of rubber stamping or support letters instead of being an advisory committee. A lot of stuff I get we haven't advised on at all. Even at this point, there's no advising that we can do. Maybe beyond how to roll it out and get it in front of people so they know about it. So maybe some marketing. For our group was this wasn't brought to our group before. I know it's been in discussion for you said up to a year. This group's relatively new, but this seems to be a pattern just from this and other items. So I want to get to a point where I can understand like what we need to do, like what we need to show that we are a committee that can be trusted to be brought in on these conversations early on so we can provide input. There's stuff in here that I think we could have contributed to, including the rollout. There are networks that we have people on this committee have that DPW may not have access to, probably some skills and resources DPW does not have access to, maybe some capacity that we could bring. So I just want to know how we can get to that point where we're not just hearing about it after we hear about an urban spaceship that's already at Public Works Committee, or excuse me, Urban Milwaukee.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put it back on you and ask, what do you want to advise on? Because I think about the number of projects and initiatives that I manage every day, and that's just me, and I've got 4 other full-time colleagues in our unit, and we definitely want to work with you all, but I don't want to have to come like every time with everything that I'm doing. So I'm just curious, where are your interests and where are your skills that you want to provide to us? And you don't have to answer that right now because you all have different skill sets, but I think that that's something for you all to think on, because I know you all can be a help to us, but we just want to know, where do you want to fit in?
And yeah, absolutely. And I think we don't want this to become what historically has happened, which is like a DPW show and tell, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, here's what we're doing. What do you think? How can you help out? But I see your point, and there's definitely value in that depending on the project or the initiative. So I think, as new things come up, I think we, the collective group here, should figure out a way, like, how is that reported on? It shouldn't be like every time DPW tells everything you're doing, but like, what is the way to do that so that if there is something that piques your interest, you have that opportunity to chime in. But I also think kind of bigger than that, and what I like what y'all are doing is through the work groups, you all are almost identifying priorities for the city that would then be passed on to DPW most likely, but perhaps some other department as well, where that's coming from the committee as being, this is a priority for the city of Milwaukee. And then there would obviously be some back and forth on that since it's coming from you all as being kind of a priority.
Yeah, I think those are good points. And I know where Montavious is coming from, and I think it's very important that that is our motivation. And I think we are on the right track. I think we're all ready to be doing work that is proactive. But I think, at least in the 2 work groups I'm in, and I know we'll talk about those, we are kind of identifying both who we can talk to and who we can help establish what we care about and what we're working on, and then also what that is, at least in terms of policies. And I know the working projects group probably has that as well. So I think if we can really narrow those down and then be able to come out and make sure that we're making it clear to the different stakeholders and people that we work with what those priorities are. Then if that's still not happening, if we're still being reactive, then we can say, what do we need to do to prove that we can do this?
I hope that helps. Anything else, Montavious? Just maybe 2 more minutes here and then we'll turn it over to Dan to respect his time.
Yeah, I think this will be a larger conversation, possibly for another meeting, possibly offline. Just about how we can better work together between DPW and this committee.
Okay. Anything else on Plaza specific? Appreciate it.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Educate. All right. We'll move on to the next item.
You want me to just jump in?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Dan, I'm just in my head right now. So yeah, thank you, Dan, for being here. Very, very good to see you. So yeah, this is another one of these items that we just heard about through the grapevine. I wanted to hear more in detail about it, more than we can get in local articles. So yeah, Dan, could you introduce yourself to the group and just give us how we got here to this TIF district and what you guys have planned for it? And also, could you explain what a TIF district is?
Sure. So good morning, everybody. I'm Dan Casanova with the Department of City Development, and my primary role there is creating and managing tax incremental financing districts, which over the last 5 years or so in particular, we've been trying to use those to pay for bike and pedestrian improvements wherever possible. Sometimes it's at the creation of a district, like is the case with this Northwestern Mutual project, but more often it's at the end of a district when we're ready to close it out. There's a policy by the Common Council to amend districts at the end of their life to pay for public infrastructure within 1/2 mile of the boundary of the district. And the 1/2 mile rule is by state statute. Originally, when the council directed us to do that, it was really to help pay to just repave streets. That was about 10 years ago. And we have since redirected that to more bike and pedestrian enhancements, not just simple repaving projects. A tax incremental district, I guess the short version of that is it's a way for the city to capture future tax revenue that is going to be generated by new development and use it for improvements in that area. It could be public infrastructure improvements. It could also be funding going directly into the project to help the project actually move forward. And in this case with Northwestern Mutual, it's a little bit of both. How much time do I have to go through all this? Because I can give you the
20 minutes.
Okay.
9:25-ish.
Okay.
That works.
Yeah, that'd be great. I will share my screen here and give you the kind of the background on the current Northwestern Mutual project and some of the public infrastructure improvements that we're looking at nearby. So this is Northwestern Mutual's downtown campus. The Tower and Commons is their larger building that they completed in I think 2017. The South Building is their iconic historic building, and then the North Building is kind of the building in question right now. It's a late 80s office building of about 500,000 square feet. And in the post-COVID world, like most companies, they've been looking at their future office space needs and do they need as much office space as they currently have? How are people going to be working in the future? And so they started to look at their options, and one option that they looked at was just kind of refurbishing the existing building, but not making any major aesthetic changes to it and not really changing the interior layout, just upgrading their mechanicals and replacing their windows. And that was like a $200 million project to really just kind of do basic maintenance on the building. The other option they looked at was basically mothballing that downtown building and moving additional people to their campus in Franklin. They opened that campus in the mid-2000s, and that was a result of kind of the post 9/11 world where companies were worried about having all of their servers, all of their operations in one location, and they wanted to have backup plans in place. And so they acquired this land in Franklin and started building this suburban campus out there. And there's room for 2 additional buildings out there, and parking structures. You can see it's kind of your typical suburban office park setup, but that's the cheaper option for them would be to do something like this where they build some low-rise buildings in Franklin and sell the downtown building or potentially tear the downtown building down. And then the other option that they looked at was completely redeveloping the downtown office building, the north office building. And so that's the direction that they decided to go in. So that's a $500 million investment, and they're actually keeping the steel structure of this building. So from a environmental perspective, it's much better than completely demolishing and building a new building. They're going to take this all the way down to the steel structure, and then completely rebuild the facade and add some square footage as well. They're using the same architect as the Tower and Commons, as you can probably tell, Picard Chilton. And they're also going to be adding about 80,000 square feet to this building to accommodate more employees. So as a result, they're completely closing their Franklin campus and bringing somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 additional employees downtown, depending on how you count it. So from an overall city perspective, urban perspective, we're increasing our tax base here. We're bringing more density downtown, more people downtown. And it's a win in many ways. But as part of that decision process for them, they're trying to improve their overall campus and the employee experience on campus. And they have requested, or they haven't officially requested it yet, but I think they will be shortly requesting to vacate Cass Street north of Mason. So this is Mason looking east towards the lake, and to the right is the Tower and Commons building that was already built. And what they found after they built this building, they thought a lot of people were going to enter the building off of Wisconsin Avenue, and they built all those gardens, and there's a grand entrance on Wisconsin Avenue. But because it's set back from Wisconsin Avenue, it's really the Mason Street side is where most employees and visitors enter. And they didn't feel like it even looks like an entrance. It kind of looks like a back alley on Mason here. And so as part of this project with the North Tower, they're trying to create a more, and this is their words, like a more grand entrance experience for their employees and visitors. And they've actually been looking at this Cass Street crossing here for a number of years, and had looked at closing it in the past because it does create a lot of conflict points with their workers leaving their parking garage or going into downtown. They just have not been a fan of this intersection for a long time because of the conflict points that it presents. And most of the vehicle traffic on Cass Street is their employees exiting and entering their parking garage. So what they're proposing as part of their North Tower project is they're gaining 2 floors in the North Tower building because they're able to reduce the mechanicals that are on the upper floors of the building. But then they're also proposing to build essentially another commons at the base of the North Tower building and provide kind of a better entrance experience for visitors. So this is kind of that same shot, Mason looking east, where they are proposing to build a 3-story connector building essentially from the North Tower building to their parking structure that would go over Cass Street. As part of this, they're calling this a conservatory. This would be a relatively public portion of the building right here. They're not sure yet if this would be a cafe or just like a public meeting spot that people could use. People probably don't realize, but their lobby space over in the Tower and Commons is open to the public during business hours. There's a Starbucks in there, and you can go in there and sit by the fireplace and do work. Although granted, it doesn't totally feel like it's open to the public to do that. And they're suggesting a similar thing here with this connector building, that pedestrians would be able to cross through it, I'm assuming during business hours. I think the key to that, a lot of that is in the details of how does that actually look and feel? How is it signed? How does the general public actually feel? Do they feel like they actually can cross through there? Or does it feel private? I want to touch, because I know generally we would not support closing the street grid and creating any type of super block. But I do want to touch on a lot of the other public and pedestrian improvements that we're proposing in the area. And this block is a little unique in that Northwestern Mutual owns both sides of the block. Usually a block has multiple property owners. And so to potentially vacate a street, you need the permission of, I'm not sure if it's all or a majority of the property owners.
All of them.
All of them. And then because Cass Street does not continue to the south, it is a dead end in some ways. But I do want to touch on a lot of the other public infrastructure improvements that we're including in this tax incremental district, because the city is going to have about $10 million to make improvements within 1/2 mile of this area. You're probably already familiar with the Van Buren project. So just to the west of this, DPW is looking at transforming Van Buren and potentially adding protected bike lanes on Van Buren from, Mike, is that from Michigan or Wisconsin?
Currently Wisconsin.
Wisconsin up to the Holton Street Bridge. And then you can see the list of projects that we're proposing here, and it's a lot of projects that have probably been on your list for a long time in this eastern portion of downtown, and I can go through them all pretty quickly. The first one is finally fixing this intersection at Lincoln Memorial Drive in Michigan. You all know that it's a terrible experience for pretty much everyone, bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles. The right turn bypasses, the large crossings, and the plan right now, I think this is the most recent plan, is to close all those right turn bypasses, add bike lanes up at the sidewalk level on Michigan, reduce some of the lanes so that the crossings are much shorter. And this TID is going to allow us to fund at least the first phase of this to do some of these portions around the Couture so that the streetcar can open up later this year through the Couture. And then we're going to need additional funding later this summer probably to complete this, but this gets this project started, which has been on our list for a long time. We're also going to be funding the addition of a sidewalk on the east side of Lincoln Memorial Drive from the Art Museum up to where the Mason Street Bridge lands. And this is like the case study example of a desire path where people have been walking over this for years as they're at the Art Museum. They want to go north to Veterans Park. There's no sidewalk. They don't want to cross to the west side of the street and then have to cross back. And part of the reason I think there wasn't a sidewalk or path here in the past is there wasn't really a great spot to connect to, because the end of the Mason Street Bridge was kind of set up like an on-ramp. And last year there was a redesign done. It's not perfect, but there's actually a place for it to connect to now, where there's now a crosswalk for people to go either east or west from this point at the end of the Mason Street Bridge. So now we're able to make that connection here finally. And there's also funding for improving and extending the protected bike lane on Kilbourne. Whether you call that a protected bike lane or not, I think is controversial. But the goal with this funding is to provide better protection to the existing separated bike lane on Kilbourne, but also extend that from where it ends now at Jackson, extend that all the way to Prospect and Juno Park so that it can connect up with the Oak Leaf Trail. There'd also be a section from Kilbourne south to roughly Mason, where we would be adding either a protected bike lane on Prospect or doing something on that western end of Juno Park to provide a seamless connection. We're doing a couple improvements with the county, replacing all the paths within Cathedral Square so that we can get closer to the vision that's going to be in the 2040 downtown plan for a reimagined Cathedral Square. We are putting significant funds towards this mess of an intersection, the Astor Prospect Kilbourne intersection, where again you have these large right turn bypasses, long crossing distances, really disconnecting downtown from the lakefront and Juno Park. Again, also working with the county to replace the paths and the lighting in Juno Park and take care of some deferred maintenance in the building in Juno Park. It sounds like they're gonna be establishing a permanent beer garden here this summer. And so these funds will go towards just general improvements to the, essentially the bike and pedestrian improvements throughout the park with the path and the lighting. And then the last piece of this is replacing this section of the Oak Leaf Trail where it inclines from Lincoln Memorial Drive up to Mason. It's a narrow portion of the trail. It's in pretty poor condition. It's very steep on the east side of the trail. And this was in the county's budget for either this year or next year, but we're gonna use the tax incremental financing district to fund this so that they can pay for other improvements along the Oak Leaf Trail elsewhere. So that's kind of the general overview of what this district is paying for in terms of public infrastructure. I know the main question was about Cass Street. I do not believe Northwestern Mutual has officially applied to vacate Cass Street, but I do think it is their intention and they'll be doing that probably in the next month or so. And then the process is that request, I don't want to get this wrong, Kevin, but the request is forwarded to the Department of Public Works to review utilities and traffic implications and costs to potentially vacate that. And then there are a series of public hearings at the City Plan Commission, Public Works Committee, and ultimately the Common Council to review that request. But it is their right to at least make that formal request, being the property owner on both sides of that street.
Yeah, that's accurate, Dan. So they have not submitted a vacation request yet. We have had some discussions about it. They are looking to vacate it. It sounded like they were serious about it. And they said that they would be doing it somewhat soon, but the public input for this, for the public right-of-way vacation for this would come in a few months after they submit the public right-of-way vacation. So they're just talking about it. This hasn't, we heard about this, our department's heard about this, well, at least I heard about this first in the news, and then the developers started reaching out to us, and most of us felt that way in DCD. I'm not sure if Dan was involved in any of the conversations prior to that. So this is a new conversation. It's not like the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee wasn't considered. This is actually where, this is where we would be discussing it first. So it's, nothing's fleshed out yet. They have not submitted a public right-of-way vacation yet. But it would be going to the Public Works Committee for us to discuss, and if anyone here was in favor or against it, they could voice their opinion there.
And just one comment on the timing. So with a project like this, especially when it's a company potentially doing an expansion, and in this case, closing their office in Franklin, they guard that information very tightly. They don't want rumors circulating amongst their employees that this campus is going to be closed, and oh, I just bought a house in Franklin to be near this campus, and now I'm going to have to commute downtown. And so it was intentional on their part to wait until they were able to formally announce that they were going to be closing their Franklin campus. They didn't tell anybody. I would guess only probably 5 people within the company were aware that this was underway, and that was by design.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I guess my question is the TID and all of the capital projects and things related to that can be approved. Like that's gonna be approved. That's up next week, as I understand it.
Yeah, so the timing on that one, a tax incremental district first goes to what's called the Joint Review Board. I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but the Joint Review Board is made up of representatives from the city, the county, MPS, MATC, and then there's a citizen member who right now is Francis Hardrick, who's also the chair of the Redevelopment Authority. And that's kind of been the historical crossover between the two boards, that the chair of the Redevelopment Authority is on the Joint Review Board. After it goes to the Joint Review Board for an introduction, then it goes to the Redevelopment Authority for what is officially the public hearing. So that occurred in February. Then it goes to the Zoning, Neighborhood and Development Committee of the Common Council, which occurred Tuesday of this week. And then it goes to the full Common Council, which would occur next Tuesday. And then it also goes then back to the Joint Review Board for final approval, which potentially could occur next week as well.
Yes, so I guess what I was getting at is that there's no contingency currently between the Cass Street vacation and the rest of the TID projects as they're described here.
Correct. I would say that that the company would say that it's pretty important to their overall decision of closing the Franklin campus and kind of doubling down on downtown.
Sure, I guess my concern is we would end up pitting one set against the other, and I'd rather avoid that. So I just kind of want to understand the landscape of kind of the decision points. Thank you.
Yep.
So, oh, go ahead, Montavia.
Go ahead, Larissa.
You go ahead, Montavia.
So none of the city's 10 million part of the TIF would go towards deposit, correct?
Correct. All that improvement or change to Mason Street is paid for by the company.
Okay. And can you explain why the 10 million is only spent downtown?
Yeah, so that's by state statute. So state statute only allows funding within a half mile of a district's boundary. So we've been trying to be aggressive, and I would say we're very aggressive in, I don't want to call it a loophole, but we use it to our advantage to spend where we can. And the goal is that then DPW with their limited resources maybe doesn't need to spend any funds downtown. So we've been doing it where it's possible, so that the limited city, state, federal funds that we have for reckless driving and bike and pedestrian improvements can be spent in other areas of need where TIF might not be possible.
Got it. Thank you. And just a technical question. You can spend TID money in another jurisdiction, specifically the Oak Leaf Trail, which is a county trail.
You can spend it on what's called public infrastructure is what we're calling it, and it can be for it cannot be for like a school building. For some reason, you can't pay for a school improvement. You can't pay for a police or fire station, but you can pay for like parks and street improvements.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, and that, again, that's all by state statute, unfortunately, kind of controls what we can and can't use TIF funds for.
So my point is not necessarily a question, but just maybe food for thought, especially for us as we're kind of thinking about what we may be able to provide to the conversation. But I think I'm naturally a pessimist in a lot of ways, and which is not specific to this project, just in general. But my first thought was, of course, if Northwestern Mutual did at some point vacate the premises, then what would the effect be of Cass closing at that point, which then made me think open-ended question, not the pessimistic question of what is the benefit to the larger community, to the downtown environment of this closure and this plaza outside of its benefit to Northwestern Mutual, which is the more positive side of kind of thinking about what the benefits could be, what else could be done with that closure and plaza that can benefit the public, and not just Northwestern Mutual, although that would be obviously the intent.
Can I follow on to that? I guess I would be curious about the other options. We don't necessarily have to know all of them now, but I know the city has leased public space for durations or maybe there's improvements the city can make that would meet the needs without vacating entirely and permanently, as I understand it.
Yeah, and I don't know all the legal options. If we can have reversionary rights of some sort, if they were to sell or change or whatever action might happen in the future. I'm not totally sure like what options we have in that regard.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, appreciate it.
But you are right, Mitch, that once a right of way is vacated, it gets reverted to its prior ownership. So typically that's 50-50. You get half the right of way, and then the adjacent owner gets half the right of way.
Okay.
And there's a line that would be immediately down where the right of way was. And that is permanent unless, there's like.
So it doesn't go back to the city or anything?
No, it reverts to prior ownership. And if prior ownership cannot be established, then it reverts in a 50-50 fashion.
So you get on half of the street?
Yes. And that includes half of the infrastructure that's underneath there too. So technically the right-of-way vacation is like reverting, and so it's like free land, but it's not free land because the city has put a fair amount of money into that land. And so you're buying that infrastructure too.
If there's water or electrical or whatever, you're responsible for it? Or whoever owns it?
Whoever owns it, yeah.
Okay.
Or the easier fashion is to put an easement over it.
Okay.
Could we look at the rendering again? And then, Anna, if you want to ask a question.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Am I still sharing
Yeah,
my screen? Okay, sorry about that.
just the PowerPoint.
Here we go.
Dan, I say thanks for coming out here. This is really informative, so I really appreciate your time. There's a lot of really exciting projects going into the TID. I'm wondering for like this rendering, how finalized these designs are and whether there's room. I think most people here know me. They know I love closing streets to cars. But I would love to know if there's an option that could keep CAS open to bikes and pedestrians outside of business hours. Whether that looks like a breezeway or whatever. I'm just wondering like how much room we have to iterate on this design in a way that maybe we don't lose the connectivity outside of business hours.
Yeah, I would say that. Is my mic on? Okay. I would say that it's pretty preliminary. And I don't honestly know what the next step would be. It's probably them officially applying for that vacation and kind of kicking off that review process. They strategically placed trees here, so you can't really even see what's happening on the ground floor through there. But I believe the intent is to have it enclosed with the public being able to go through during business hours. I don't believe there's any type of pass-through proposed, but obviously it's not real clear from this image.
That's helpful to know. Thank you.
I think another thing for us to be mindful for as a committee is what the bike lanes are going to be looking like along Mason Street after this. They're proposing a table there, and it looks like a shared street type environment, which is awesome. But I think we want to be mindful of the bike connection east-west there as well, and how this will affect that.
Right, it's an important connection, especially with the connection to the Oak Leaf Trail just to the east. You will have, again, the protected bike lane also on Kilbourne and then Wells as well. Is that correct, Mike? There's a Wells?
To Van Buren, yeah.
To Van Buren, okay.
Yep. But then also on Michigan as well, just south.
Yeah. The project sounds pretty incredible.
Yeah, this is a lot of work being done. What do we think as a larger group in terms of what we no decisions have to be made now, but what we might be able to offer in terms of any feedback or future advising we might be able to do or are interested in doing.
It sounds like the TID is up for approval next week, so I think any input would be for the Cass Street vacation,
Yeah.
which will play out over the next few months. So I assume we'll have an opportunity, as will the rest of the public, to weigh in. And I think we should, once we get some more kind of clarity on the exact proposal.
Well, to me, it sounds like our concerns so far are, it sounds like overall, we kind of like this idea. It sounds attractive and it'll provide some resources for the city to make the pedestrian and bicycle environment much better downtown overall. However, there are concerns about closing Cass Street completely. We're hearing the bike connection.
Keep that open for a bike connection. I also don't like what I'm seeing right now on Mason and seeing them putting it back exact same way. I'm not really sure why they need parking out there. I mean, they've got a parking structure, they're building new stuff, they can adjust that so that they don't need to have parking out in the middle of the street and have off-street bike lanes on here too, and really make this more of a campus type feel like they're looking for. But that's my thought on it.
So overall, positive feelings, but there are some concerns about maintaining the public right of way and the accessibility for the area.
Yeah, that's a fair summary. Good summary.
Let me just add one more thing for you to think about is vehicular drop-off. They kind of show an area maybe right here where vehicles could pull over, but obviously that's often going to be blocking the bike lane. And that's kind of an issue right now on Mason as people are getting off on the south side. So just to potentially consider ways in which all that drop-off that is occurring is not also blocking the bike lane.
Dan, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. If you hadn't, I was about to.
All right, a couple more minutes. There's one comment in the chat from Sarah David. Any way to put up temporary concrete infrastructure to see what happens to the flow experience / vehicle rerouting?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that something they can do? Can they put up some like temporary Jersey barriers or something?
The city would have to at this point.
Yeah, but that's for them, right? Why would the city do it? It's for their own experiment, right?
Yeah, but the city owns the street.
I mean, we can partner with them, but
They can use the interim plaza program.
yeah.
I mean, really.
Kevin Muse, the city engineer, is on the call too. Kevin, chime in if need be. But I feel like something like that would probably come up as part of DPW's review if there were concerns with any of those issues around traffic flow. I don't know if we required right off the bat, but probably during the review process.
I think they would be open to it. As I said, they've wanted to close this to vehicular traffic for a number of years. So who pays for it and how that works, I'm not sure, but I don't think they would object to closing it off, this summer.
Let's do it. Okay. Put my application.
All right, any other questions, discussion? All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yep, sure.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to work group updates and discussions. So can we start with the strategic partnership and communication work group? Larissa, you seem to have stepped up as leader, which I appreciate very much. Can you give the update?
Sure, yeah. I sent over that chart. So the strategic partnerships and communications group is made up of Aderon, me, Kevin Kushel, Kevin Eccles, and Montavious. And so we have been able to meet twice, once last month and once this month. And this is a kind of draft chart that we made up that is kind of a compilation of some of our different priorities and ideas for what the function of the work group could be, and then some of the actions that we may be able to take. So I'll do a quick run through the type of work that we see this work group being able to achieve is involving key partners, disseminating information, and involvement of the general public. And through that, some of the functions of being able to do that may be identifying and contacting potential partners, requesting and documenting feedback from partners, identifying opportunities to improve public awareness and involvement, identifying how our committee can promote existing resource and offer feedback for their improvement, ensuring information about the committee and its function is accessible and accurate, and then identify opportunities for improvements within the committee. So pretty broad, not saying we would be doing all of those things at any given time, but I think part of the benefit is being able to say if we feel we have work we can take on, if there's room, we can look at this and point to something we might be able to work on or focus on, or be able to make ourselves be focused. And then the actions at the bottom were kind of a brainstorm of some of the different things that we may be able to actually do in terms of our work each month to be able to achieve some of the functions, the goals. And so those include bringing a topic to this committee during the meetings, all the way to actually meeting with key partners, presenting something to another city committee. And I think some of these can apply to other work groups as well, possibly. And then we also set up a monthly meeting date so that we can all try and have a coordinated time to meet and not have to schedule each time or each month. And what am I missing?
I'm missing the draft letter.
Oh, well, that's okay. So we also created a draft kind of working sheet that lists some of the key partners that we've all thought of that the committee might be able to connect with at any point in time, including organizations whose constituents we think would benefit from this committee or that we may represent, as well as advocacy groups, different departments within the city or county. And so Kevin has offered to come up with a sort of template to introduce ourselves
And kind of create a sort of network with the organizations so that when we are looking to provide expertise or advice or something, it will already have an established network to disseminate that information to.
And the idea is when we do have that, to be able to bring it to the larger committee and get feedback. Same with this chart and the larger list of stakeholders. It's all obviously a product of this committee, but being able to get the thoughts on the work we've been able to achieve outside of this and any edits and making sure that we're still representing some of the priorities of the larger committee.
And the idea with the network as well is for it to be a two-way street so that we can have a better understanding of what's going on with the rest of the city and the issues that are impacting the rest of the city in terms of the pedestrian and bicycle built environment.
And that's what we have. Montavious, Aaron, are we missing anything?
No, that's very good. I think you hit on all the points.
And then just a reminder, there's one open slot still for a voting member if anyone is interested.
I have a quick question. Stephen, are you a voting member?
No.
Okay. That was it.
Stephen official, were you confirmed by council?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
DPW member.
Welcome. So I guess in terms of what we have here and our thoughts on what this work group, Strategic Partnerships and Communications, is looking to kind of achieve throughout its existence, Does anyone have any feedback, any concerns that something's missing? Any overlap with their own work groups that we may want to talk about?
Could we share the partnership list with the committee members so they can add their own
Yeah.
potential partners?
Yeah, I can share that. Does that raise any concerns around working out of quorum if we all are sharing a document?
Only appending to a list. We're not communicating about policy or decisions being made.
Does it matter if everyone is like if somebody is working on it separately, does there have to be a limit to how many people work on that document at the same time? If it's a virtual document,
Workaround may be,
only one person's allowed to edit it at a time?
No, people within the work group can work on it. I don't know about the whole committee though.
Well, maybe we can
What if the work group members
people
are
have-
clearing? So like they send them the suggestions of the organizations to say Larissa and she adds it in.
Right, I think if there's a document that's available for the entire committee to view, I think you're okay. But giving everybody access to work on it at the same time, I think is problematic. Having all of the things go through a central clearinghouse like Larissa to make edits and then have that updated document available for everyone to view, I think you'll be okay.
okay, that makes sense. All right, so I will then share viewing access to committee members. If you want to change anything, you have to email me. All right.
I mean, and you might want to have access to like 2 people, but as a practical matter, it really does get kind of messy if you have 10 people all trying to edit the same document at the same time.
Yeah.
Because then it's easy to lose track of who's done what. And I know there's track changes and all that, but it gets messy fast.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Larissa. We can move on unless there's anything else on that one. Brother Mitch, are you on the targeted improvement work group?
Yeah, Ben, myself, Barry, and Kathleen.
Okay, could you provide an update for the group for last month?
If Ben wants to, I would yield it to him.
Okay.
Sure, happy to. I guess I would say there's a few things that we can report, but nothing quite as substantial as some of the other groups maybe as we're getting underway. The first is an order of business that Barry brought up to us the other day and investigated on our behalf, which is getting a better sense from the state DNR and the Friends of the Hank Aaron about the intersection of the Hank Aaron Trail and the South 6th Street Viaduct. We had some questions whether the official trail itself is on the sidewalk portion of the viaduct or whether it was on the street. And we are looking at ways that we can better connect the two with either some curb cuts and or better wayfinding signage in the area. Excuse me, I guess we can share the DNR told us or told Barry that I guess we can expect some new and better signage coming to that area along the Hank Aaron Trail this spring and summer. Otherwise, we talked about improving the area of Kinnickinnick Avenue and Maple Street. That's an ongoing discussion. And we are otherwise putting together a list of things to tackle.
Yeah, I think our goal is to kind of find that pattern of work to hopefully be a model of kind of how the public can interact with built environment and make suggestions and work with the city on improvements.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mitch,
that's
does that
great.
about cover it?
I'm glad
Yeah, no,
there's,
that was great. Thank you.
I'm glad there's movement on the Hank Aaron trail. I'm glad you guys came up with a very targeted improvement, you know, with some tangible outcomes that are possible, wayfinding, getting clearance or clarification on, you know, where the actual trail is. So yeah, I think that's a great example of what this work group should be working on. So thank you for that. Do you guys have a set meeting schedule?
Not yet.
Do you guys, can you work on getting that set? Doesn't have to be our work group, strategic partnership and communications meeting every month. You guys don't have to meet that frequently if you don't want to, or you can meet more frequently if you want to, but I think it would be good for each of the work groups to have set meeting dates. Because it's been hard already getting meetings scheduled, and to have to do it every time is gonna delay our work.
Yeah, I think a goal of meeting at least monthly is good.
Can I add to the record?
Oh, sorry.
Can I add to the record that no parking signs were posted on KK in April?
That was unrelated to the work group, but it is a targeted improvement that I appreciate.
Just celebrating.
Hear, hear. I just wanted to add quickly, I wanted to solicit input from the committee. If you're not in this working group, but you do have ideas of targeted improvements that we should add to our lists for discussion, please email me or Mitch or any of us. But I have been tasked with compiling a list.
I think that this is an important group, and then, yeah, I echo that. It's cool to see you guys are kind of getting started with some projects and seeing what you can do. I think all of the work groups are going to have a task of trying to figure out how to prioritize different topics. So I just want to mention that because I think the strategic partnerships and communications will have to talk about that, as well as this one, as well as policies, and perhaps there's another work group. But just making sure that that's top of mind as we're moving forward. And then maybe we can all try and report back on progress on that next month.
I think that's a great idea, Marissa.
And keep in mind too that if anything comes out of the work group discussions, that anyone wants to have a bigger discussion as part of the committee, that can be an agenda item as well, where there can be a bigger discussion beyond these 5-minute updates.
Yep, I think that will be the route to go once we're like really launched and underway and working on items. I think the work groups will become the majority of the agenda items. Hopefully that's the majority of the agenda items, updates, and working through issues and holdups, and sharing, you know, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and updates on those.
That is reminding me that we did want to bring up what Rachel from Brady Street brought to us last month in terms of some sort of informative or educational document about the benefits of pedestrianization, not specific to Brady, but just generally as a resource for people in Milwaukee. We had a little conversation about that, and ultimately wanted to bring it to the committee to talk about what that may look like and if that is a priority. I think if we want to leave space for work group updates still right now, we could talk about that a little bit afterwards. I just want to say it before I forget it.
True.
Okay, let's move on to next work group. Policies work group. Did you guys get a chance to meet this past month?
Yeah, I can take a stab at reporting out, and then Larissa or whoever else can chime in as well. We had a bit of a challenge finding a time where everybody could meet all at once. So we were delayed in that manner. And then the day we chose to meet was the snow day last Friday. So we had kind of a funky situation where half the group met at one time, and then the second half met later in that day, with one group member being present at both meetings to convey what happened in the first conversation. So somewhat dysfunctional. We have not found a standard meeting time yet, but I'll be happy to send out an additional doodle for a standing meeting time after this. Yeah, despite the funkiness of the meeting time, I feel like we had a pretty productive meeting, in that we have a framework, thanks to Larissa, similar to the framework that she presented on the strategic communications group. So we have a framework for the policies group. And then in addition to that, we have a kind of a working document that will track different policy and issue areas of priority for our group. I'm happy to share that if we have the time, or if people are interested to see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a working document, as I said. It is by no means complete, but it tracks different policy issue areas that were drafted within those two different meeting times. What you're seeing currently in yellow is sort of like the most incomplete thoughts. So, don't pay too much attention there. But, for each policy or issue area, we have a type, and that can be design, legislative, operational, or zoning. And then a priority, which can be immediate or critical, long range, or somewhere in the middle. And then eventually, once we learn more about where some of these issues stand, we'll add a status to those, and like the status of where we are in our advocacy on those issues. And so I think, our next meeting, we will hope to continue to build this out a little more as a working document. And then, as Larissa alluded to in general with the working groups, is really try to focus on this prioritization, because obviously there are 1 million things we could be working on. So figuring out a way to maybe solicit feedback from appropriate departments on where certain issues stands, and sort of what the levers are for where our working group could apply pressure or advocate for, which could help to, prioritize some of these issues for us. And yeah, Larissa, do you want to add anything? That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Kathleen is here, and I just want to thank you for being the group member who was able to attend both and took notes, and that was very helpful. Yeah. I don't know if you want to add anything. I know you kind of had the thoughts about the way to kind of think about prioritizing. That was helpful for us to frame everything.
Yeah, no, actually, just I like the way you've set up the document, in that, I think what's going to be helpful is just having a running list of things that we're working on, because a lot of the policies are going to be long range sort of things. It's, we're going to write a letter or make a few phone calls, and then you wait months for feedback from various governmental groups or whatever, so just having a way to keep those, so they don't fall off everybody's radar. And yeah, I think once we sit down together and actually kind of talk through some of these things, because I just sort of blurted out a bunch of random stuff, that we may or may not be interested in. But this might be where we could get together with, like, hey, if DPW is working on a bunch of stuff, we can add them to our policy list, so that we do kind of know, like, what's sort of hanging out there. Because I think the biggest thing for us is going to be trying to figure out where we get our new ideas from. Like, there are emerging issues, and how we keep track of those, how we identify those, who we need to, but the more that we can, like, flesh out this list at the beginning, like, as big picture as we possibly can, that will make it easier to kind of narrow in on smaller things that we can actually affect today.
Thank you.
And just for the record, I know my name says Kathleen on my email, but I really do go by Kathy. I
Okay.
know, but just for whatever.
Apologies.
No, that's fine. No, all my, because I use my city email and that does say Kathleen. So, but
Gotcha.
for the record.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And I think I remember right from the last meeting, which I wasn't able to join. Elena, you're our contact person for this group. And then for the targeted improvements, do you guys have a contact person?
I can be that person.
Okay. Didn't mean to put you on
do
the
now.
spot.
No, yeah, no, that's totally.
Okay.
I didn't want to take it away from Ben if you prefer, but
You can always change your mind.
yeah, no, I'm.
Okay, that's awesome. I really like that, that list of projects. Well, I like that there is a list of, or excuse me, policies and potential policies. I think it'll be important, over the next, month, couple months, really, get a lay of the land and what's possible, who controls what levers, so you can begin to whittle down which policies you want to work on. So I think it'd be great to get to a position where, we're working on these 5 policies this year. We're working on 3 short term, 1 medium term, 1 long term. And that's going to be our work for the, coming year. So then we're not bombarded with, every possible policy that, somebody might think of, then you got to work on that too. I think it'll be good for our capacity to get it whittled down. And I know it's right now it's slow going with the work groups. And I think the advisory committee as a whole, but I think that's to be expected with the new group. We're still figuring out, how we're working, the frameworks, what we're going to work on, who the players are, who we need to talk to, how we're going to work together. But I do think we are taking the right steps. And towards what we really want to see, which is better environment for pedestrians and bicyclists. So I think in the coming months we'll have more to share at these meetings and from the work group, report outs. And hopefully it's not just this time won't be just report outs, but soliciting feedback from people who aren't on those work groups, but are on the committee, and people who also join the calls. So I think we're in great position. The projects work group, we did not get a meeting scheduled this past month. And that's on me. We just couldn't get a schedule. Timing wasn't working. But I'll be the point person for that. And I'll continue to work to get something scheduled. I believe we do have 1 space open for a voting member, somebody on the committee. So if anyone's interested, please contact me or Mike or me and Mike. We'll get you added to the list.
And what time does this meeting?
There is no end time.
Oh, perfect.
We might get kicked out at 10:30, but there is no end time.
All right, lovely.
Typically, we've been trying to end around 10, but there is no official end time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings up maybe a small point, but a good point. So I do want I want everybody to be able to, have consistency in their meeting time so they know, they can adjust their schedules as needed. So I do want us to adhere to a 10 o'clock end time. If we get to a point where we just got so much to talk about, we need to extend it, then we can talk about it at that point. But I think right now we should stick to 10 so people don't feel forced to stay and discuss when they got other things to do with their day. So just out of respect to everybody, I think we should stick to ending on time each week, or each meeting.
Yep.
Good point. I think we can table the pedestrianization document talk to next month. We plan to meet the week after our meetings, so we'll be able to talk about it, and I think we'll be able to take a look at some of DPW's documents too and kind of get an idea of what we're working with.
I think so, but I think for the purposes of that discussion, it would be useful for committee members to brainstorm different ideas of what this could look like. We're talking about a document, but this could be something else. And so what does advocating for a better pedestrianization of Milwaukee look like, and how does this committee fit in with that? Because I think we all agreed with the presentation from Rachel last month, but we don't really know what that means, right? And so what does that look like for us? And if we can get some brainstorming from the committee members, then we can come up with something that's much more useful for the average citizen in Milwaukee.
Yep.
And that's that.
Yep, thank you, Cal. Okay. I think that's a good point to end. Thank you all for attending. I wish I could be there in person with you guys.
Hold on, couple more items still.
Do we?
Yeah. So new business is next.
I don't know if we have any new business.
So as a reminder, new business is an opportunity if anybody from the committee or anyone joining on the call has any thoughts on potential agenda items going forward. One item on our minds is the federal infrastructure bill that's passed recently. There's a lot of grant opportunities. The Safe Streets for All grant, which we were recently awarded a grant. The next round of funding will be released in early April. And typically that's I want to say 2 or 3 month turnaround from the time that the notice is released to when the application needs to be submitted. So in the interest of what's been discussed today, if there is any interest in having that as an agenda item next month, we can give an overview of that grant and some of the ideas we have, but also solicit ideas from the group.
In terms of what you would apply for?
Correct. Yep. So just an idea, but we'll leave it up to the chair to decide if that's worthy to put on the
Does
agenda.
a government entity have to apply for those grants?
I'd have to check. It depends on the grant. There's so many grants out there right now. Some of them, yes. Some of them, a government entity just has to be a supporting sponsor or partner. But yeah, I'd have to check.
Very cool.
We have one other idea. Thank you, Sarah. I was going to bring this up from your earlier comments. So Sarah David, if I'm saying your last name right, let me hear. If I'm saying it wrong, let me know. She is the city's artist in residence that was selected through a process several months back. I think some of you probably heard about it in various articles. She is now fully on board here, working with DPW and I think DCD a little bit. If there's interest in having Sarah provide an update, there's Sarah right there at our next meeting as well. She can provide an update as to what she's doing and also, again, solicit ideas from you all in terms of what she may be able to do to help address reckless driving.
Yep, I'm not familiar with your work, Sarah, so I do think it would be good. Are you embedded in DPW?
Somewhere between DPW, DPD, DCD, and the Arts Board.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I am a contractor specifically, so.
Okay, and your work is around reckless driving and promoting, solutions and raising awareness to that.
Correct. So
Correct.
raising awareness, behavior change if we can get to it. And then, a lot of the direction where I'm currently headed has a lot to do with points of engagement for bicycle and pedestrian interactions. So if there's an art that then can become used by the bicycle and pedestrian community for leading a bike ride, creating a point to engage the community, bicycle repair clinics, that sort of stuff could be possible. And so that's where I think that the interaction might happen.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, then yeah, I absolutely think we would love to have you present at the next meeting. I got your email address. I can contact you and we just have a conversation about that. So we can get to know each other and have a better understanding what you do, what we do and what we're about, how we can help each other and partner, because we're in the same boat, looking at reckless driving and top of our minds.
So yeah, I'm still in the learning phase, but I just want to make sure that door is open.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other agenda ideas? If not, we can move on to the last item, which is upcoming events and announcements.
I have a few. Tentatively Monday, this coming Monday on Walnut Street, and I'm not sure where on Walnut Street, but the project goes from 12th to 20th. The mayor's supposed to be out there promoting some safe streets agenda items. I'm assuming it's going to be near the DPW maintenance or operations facility out there at 14th at 11. So that's 11 on Walnut. And then I don't know if we're going to have any stuff out there showing the project or anything, but the mayor should be out there talking. But
is that associated with the reconstruction of Walnut?
yes, okay. Yes. And so like right now, if you're out there on Walnut, you're probably noticing a bunch of utility companies out there moving everything around. Well, by summer, we're going to have that roadway completely lift up, and we're going to put in off-street bike lanes and reduce it down to 1 lane. So
Awesome.
That's why he's out there for that project.
And that press event will be on Walnut, but also specific to everything else happening throughout the construction season around Reckless Driving.
Cool.
Another one that just came in here, we got a bids in for 70th Street Bridge over Hank Aaron Trail. So any of you guys who take the Hank Aaron Trail in this summer, that 70th Street Bridge is going to get torn down. We're hoping it's going to be like North Avenue, where it wasn't too much of a hassle for bikers, but it'll get closed down occasionally. And then finally, for National Avenue from 1st to 39th, there's an upcoming public information meeting to look out for. It's not scheduled yet, but sometime in May. So keep an eye on the project webpage. It should be posted on there at some point in time. If not, the next meeting, hopefully I can come in and give you a date for that one too, because I really want to get as many people at that meeting as possible to really get a feel for what we actually want out there. So,
Thank you.
yeah, and that's all I've got.
Any other events, announcements?
If you like riding bikes, there'll be a Milwaukee Critical Mass is back March 31st.
Oh, cool.
Plan is the last Friday every month, 6 p.m. Red Arrow Park.
Rolling at 6 p.m.
Yes, leaving promptly at 6 p.m.
If you like riding bikes.
I don't know if that describes anyone in this room meeting. Very cool.
Trying to narrow the audience.
Yeah.
Great.
We have a hand raised.
Mary Beth.
Yeah, no location yet, but June 1st at 6:30 to 8, the Coalition for Safe Driving, and I guess a TMJ4 and different people who are putting together those reckless driving town halls. That will be the next one. It sounds like they want to sort of change up the agenda and maybe approach it in different ways, so it won't just be a replication. If any of you went to the one a couple of weeks ago, if you are interested in particular ways of framing that agenda, I do encourage being in contact with the coalition as well. So,
Thank you.
Hello. Can people hear me?
Yes.
This mystery person. My name is Andrew, and I help out with Milwaukee Rec Community Bike Rides, and there are a bunch of those, and they're free. Different types of rides: intermediate, beginner, slow roll, and then like a touring series for people who want to go on longer rides, and maybe like a trip at the end of the spring session for MKU Rec. And so if you go to MKURec.net and then look at the programs you can register for, the information is there. So free and all ages.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I love how we're becoming a place where we're getting these announcements out. I love that.
Yeah. Big fan.
Yeah.
Keep them coming.
Yes.
All right, Montavious, next item.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm used to working in the private sector where you just end the meeting whenever you want. Regardless of what the agenda item says, like it's already 10 o'clock, like it's time to go. Like why are we so talking about this? But if it's on the agenda, yes, we do have to discuss it. So sorry for my premature trying to adjourn the meeting. But now, yeah, so again, thank you all for being here. I think we can go ahead and adjourn now. This has been a great meeting. I think we all have a lot of marching orders for the next meeting and the time in between those meetings, between these meetings. So if anyone needs any help from me, please email me, give me a call. I'm happy to attend the other work groups that I'm not on. But do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second. I don't think you can, but I'll say, I think I heard Aaron second, so. Cool. All right, thank you all.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you, thank you.
Is it one round?